My name is Jason.
My name is Judd.
And this is The Sixth Ring, a podcast about the Trophy tabletop role-playing game.
And today's theme is Feast.
Setting out.
So, Judd, it has been a little bit since we have had a chance to sit down and record. Probably over a month, actually. It's been a while. And in that time, I know you and I both have enjoyed a feast of gaming between then and now and the holidays and everything else, in particular trophy gaming. I just wanted to maybe just have us talk about what we've been up to gaming wise. That's always kind of fun. How have things been going?
It's been going all right. I feel like there's been a huge turnover in my, not people turnover, but character turnover in my Trophy Gold campaign. In the Thursday Night Crew, we had one of the founding members actually make it to retirement. So we kind of had a little retirement party for them.
Nice.
And saw them off. At around the same time, a couple people died. So there was this interesting, cool thing where a brand new character got to be the experienced character for all these rookies.
Okay.
Which was really neat. He had just been on one incursion before. And so everybody was kind of treating him like the rookie. And then there was this kind of just all this huge movement among the characters. There were some deaths, there was a retirement, and then a friend of mine offered to run an incursion. And so his character was not in the adventure and my new character was. So the new guy got to be kind of like the old guy who was welcoming all these people,
Right.
which was neat. I think that's a really fun thing to see happen. I didn't expect that to happen with that character so quickly. And because it happened so soon, and maybe even before he was really ready, and he's kind of like this grumpy priest character. It was cool. It was really neat to see that. I mean, I've seen that happen in workplaces, right? Where hey, you're not the new person anymore. You don't get to lean on that.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, he was kind of getting us all in the groove. How about you? How's your game going?
Mine's been pretty good, but I was going to ask you a little bit more about yours. I'm curious about, you said that your friend was running an incursion. Is it something that he wrote, or is it something from somewhere else, or what?
He said, hey, Judd, if things are a little hectic with you, I could run a game. I don't like holding on to the GM seat too tightly, especially in Trophy Gold. I have no grand campaign plan, so I was pretty excited to play. And I sent him a bunch of incursions that I had just so he had good examples. And there's the example in the book. So he had the format there. And we had a phone call where we talked about the format and what's useful and what's not. And yeah, he wrote one up and it was cool with serpent folk and a vampiric tree, and it was wild and a lot of fun.
Just to switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe you'll agree, but something I find after a campaign has been going for a while is that the downtime becomes more interesting. Those downtime moments become more interesting. It's at a certain point, the players are starting to think a lot more about the world, about their goals, about their drives, and how they relate to one another. And I'm curious if you've started to experience that, A+ downtime time that I think kind of happens as you go.
Yeah. And I've decided that this little town where they have their HQ has become kind of like an adventuring boomtown. So their adventures are just all over the place, and a bunch of weaponsmiths and curators of serpent folk, ancient artifacts and pottery and all kinds of stuff have moved in to kind of deal with that economy. And so there was one game where we had a party. I asked one player what he was doing at the party, and he's like, I'm just going to make sure that nobody steals anything off of our HQ. And I was like, okay, I guess that's a hunt roll. And he rolled a 2, and they were being hunted by a vampire who they stole from in, the third game.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, there's a vampire in the house. Absolutely. So half of the group is drunk dancing, and the 2 people are dealing with a vampire. It very much felt like a D&D metaphor for my 20s in some weird way. It was kind of awesome. I was into it. It's neat how things get fleshed out, and the world, I don't know, it just gains shape in a weird way.
I don't have to tell you, you're an old hand at Burning Wheel, and Burning Wheel to me is one of the great games for those kind of moments. That sort of really long, deep, rich world building kind of play, where you get to really live in the character and you get to really live in the world. And I find that in Dungeon World and Trophy, that starts to really settle in after a bit.
Yeah.
After you've done some adventures, after you've done some dungeons, it starts to really become a thing. I have a long-running YouTube campaign going. We're on like session 14 or something like that. In between the incursions, we have a downtime session, or pretty close to a session. Like usually we do a couple hours. And there is this story going on, like in the background. Like it's not the incursion, it's not the dungeon. It's like this other story that is sort of connected by these downtime moments, and that just sort of sews it all up together, you know? And I love it when campaigns reach that point. A long lived-in campaign. There's nothing like it to me. Like I love it.
It's special. You start to create this shorthand and context with your friends that is really neat, and I think unique. And I don't know why with Trophy Gold, but somehow surprising. Like it's just such a sparse, tight game. It's somehow surprising that, I don't know, it creates this thing.
It's the Devil's Bargains. The Devil's Bargains, because the Devil's Bargains are like an explicit way for the players to author fiction. We've talked about that before.
Yeah.
It's an invitation for them to like dive in there and like become like authors of the fiction. And I think that once a group gets really good at it, they start to take ownership over great big parts of the setting.
Right,
they start to care about the overall storyline. I don't know, I love that. That to me, that's like Zen role playing. Like I just love that, you know? So good. My gaming, my Trophy Gold gaming especially has been a feast of gaming. I decided to kick off a brand new OSR campaign in order to support my other podcast, Fear of a Black Dragon, where we review OSR modules. And so I scheduled a ton of sessions between now and March where I'm going to be running all these different OSR modules converted for Trophy Gold. And so far we have done Prison of the Hated Pretender. We have done the Bruja, the Beast, and the Barrow, and a Mörkborg dungeon called the Death Ziggurat. It has been so enjoyable. I am learning so much more about like just how to convert these modules efficiently for Trophy Gold, where it doesn't take me very long to do it. I'm in this space that I love to be in my gaming, where I'm getting to like just try out all these different like adventures and modules and things.
Yeah.
Getting lots of good material for Fear of a Black Dragon. So it's just, it's been so good. And I'm just really excited that this is kind of like what my 2021 looks like, right? Is just doing like, just packing in tons of OSR stuff, using a system that I prefer.
Yeah. I could see Trophy Gold like handling Mörkborg stuff pretty well. Like I feel like that is a good fit somehow.
Yeah, it is a good fit. Yeah. I found with this particular module, the Death Ziggurat, so we've done only one session so far of a planned 2-session run, but it's going great. I mean, it's very, very creepy, very good. Mörkborg is a little more heavy metal than Trophy is. Trophy's a little bit more like fairy tale, but they're both very dark. So I think the darkness helps, there's a connection there.
Yeah.
This particular module, the Death Ziggurat, is great because, for Trophy Gold especially, because it doesn't dwell too much on stats and details. Like it's much more about just ideas and mood. And that's a great fit for Trophy. Trophy wants to be in a space where it's all about atmosphere and mood and themes and not necessarily tons of stat blocks.
Nice.
So the conversion was a snap. It was really, really easy.
That's nice. I feel like that when the OSR modules are strange and moody, I feel like it's a good convert. I don't know. I love when OSR modules run away from your first adventure is like clearing out a goblin warren, and just it gets so weird. The first game that I saw do that was DCC RPG, where you know, as a first level character, you're just gonna
it's on 10, it's on 11 already.
Who knows? Yeah.
Yeah.
That tradition has continued, and it's lovely.
It is one of the best parts of the OSR. Tom and I have talked about this before on Fear of a Black Dragon. Well, you don't have to do rats in the basement anymore. Right. You don't have to do skeletons in the cave. You can go straight to fighting like chaos demon lords in the very beginning. And you're right. DCC is probably on the very cutting edge of that originally, you know, like when they started coming out. But that has kept going. And Death Ziggurat is very much in that vein. But everything I've played so far has been pretty enjoyable. The Bruja, the Beast, and the Barrow, a very, very tight little 5-room dungeon. And we did the whole thing in one session. I actually have that up on YouTube. I really, really strongly recommend people watching that video if you want to see an OSR module in Trophy Gold, because the conversion was fairly light. I just basically wrote some set goals, but otherwise was able to run it as it's written, just adjusting the monsters on the fly.
Do you underline or highlight like moments that you see in the text?
I do, yeah. Basically what I do is I take my PDF and I read it, obviously, and then I think about, okay, what are the natural sets here?
Right.
And then I make set goals based off what is kind of like the main thing happening in that part of the dungeon. Yeah, I kind of highlight like little cool descriptive bits that I think would be fun to throw out there. I might scribble down the endurance of a monster, you know?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this monster's like an 8 or whatever, you know? I've gotten to the point where I can convert these modules like 20 minutes at this point, not even that. That's not a conversion that I could like share with someone, but for me, for my personal use, it's really fast now.
Right.
I think we're going to talk about a little bit about that later, I think, so.
Yeah, oh, totally. There's a surprising amount of gaming you can do if you could think of like 3 sets. So that's like 3 cool places and really one monster to stick in there somewhere.
Yeah.
That might move between them or might not. And like maybe a trap. That can be a night of gaming. Like if you can think of those 3 things and maybe 2 moments a piece in each, you know, if you want to go real light and fast.
The conversions are super simple. And that's actually, listeners, this is a little bit of a preview of what we're going to talk about in one of the later segments. But I'm glad we're this year in 2021, we're kind of starting that conversation, like converting modules. I feel like that is something that, keeping with our feast theme, there is a feast of like good, fun adventures and stuff out there. And for me, I don't love to play those older systems. I just have different sensibilities in my gaming. And so the fact that I'm able to take these settings and these adventures that I otherwise like and play them in a system I like pretty easily is really great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good stuff. Yeah, so I am gaming with Fraser Simons again. Fraser is somebody who I used to game with like 2 or 3 times a week for years. And then we didn't have a chance to game for like a whole year. And so it's been so delightful and
nice.
rewarding for me personally just to like have it back at my table. You know, it's like so great. It like feels like home.
Yeah. No, there's a shorthand that you get when you game with someone a lot.
Yeah.
It's not that they don't surprise you. It's that the way that they surprise you is, I think, very familiar. And it's
Absolutely.
lovely. Having gamed with Fraser very little, but enough to know that like, I get it. That must be that must be nice.
It's fun. Let's go to the next segment.
Clawing for gold.
Okay, so continuing my shoehorn of the theme into these segments.
Yeah.
Zine Quest is a veritable feast of new gaming stuff. How'd you like that? Is that good?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. As there was last year, Zine Quest 3 is going to have tons of trophy stuff in it. I am aware of about 7 trophy-related projects so far, and I think that we'll be kind of highlighting those as we have time. But today, I want to just talk about one of them, and that is a game that is hitting Zine Quest. That's Kickstarter's annual role-playing game zine promotion that they do. It's hitting Kickstarter on February 9th, and that is called Token. The game is Token by Gabriel Robinson. And Token is, and I'm quoting here, a duet game of tragic fates intertwined in the dark woods. It's a one-shot game. It's GM-less, interestingly, and it's rooted in trophy. I'm excited about this for a few reasons. I don't know a lot about it yet, just a little bit that Gabriel has shared, like on social media. But my understanding of it is it's a duet game, meaning it's just 2 players. One player plays a monster in a dark wood, and another player plays like a hero. The game is all about the monster and the hero circling each other and leaving these mementos for one another in different ways. That's why it's called Token.
Nice.
And you ultimately have to decide like whether you're going to have conflict or not. And I've seen some of the early artwork. It's very, very beautiful, just very moody and shadowy and so good. Another reason why I'm excited about Token is because Gabriel has written a huge amount of stuff going into the trophy books. Gabriel's a very, very talented writer. He, in fact, won the Trophy Gold contest that we held last year. For Zine Quest 2, he did a game called Candlelight, which is really good. And Candlelight was like Trophy Dark in reverse. You play like the spirits of people who died in the forest, like trying to escape the forest. So
nice.
The game just has like a great pedigree. It looks really awesome. And I think it's going to be one that people should pay attention to and definitely try to get in on when it hits Kickstarter.
I'm reading this off your notes, but I'm agreeing that I would love to see more games that focus on, one player and one GM. I just think it's a great way to play and
underserved format.
Yeah. I foresee a lot of monsters making out with heroic characters in the forest. I just
Yes.
pretty sure that's going to happen.
I think you're probably right. Anyway, Token, February 9th. Go take a look at that, folks. And really, if you're listening to this, be sure to follow the Trophy Twitter account at Trophy RPG, because that Twitter account will be, throughout all of Zine Quest, will be promoting and hyping up all the various trophy projects that are on Zine Quest. So there's a bunch of other stuff coming. And yeah, it's going to be really exciting. And just to do a little clawing for gold pitch for us, Trophy proper is available for pre-order still, so you can pre-order it. We'll have a link in the show notes. Let's go to the next segment.
Cool.
Into the forest dark.
We are going to begin a conversation about converting classic and OSR style modules to Trophy Gold. Now, a few preliminary things here. First, there are instructions for doing this in the original Trophy Gold release, and they are perfectly sound. They work. They're great. They're very detailed, and you may not need all that detail, but as a sort of foundation, it's very good. The purpose of this conversation that we're going to have is to just sort of flesh out some of these ideas, sort of underpinning that process, so that it makes more sense than just to kind of give tips. The subject of converting modules is probably too big for Judd and I to handle in one segment, listeners.
Oh, yeah.
So we'll be talking about different aspects of it in future episodes as well. But for today, we're going to start with some basic stuff. Today, we're talking about doing room-by-room conversions versus creating sets that capture the overall feel of the dungeon.
Right.
So granular versus more abstract. This was your topic idea. It's a very good one, Judd. So kick us off. Like, what's your initial thinking here?
One of my first conversions was Tomb of Horrors, and I looked at it and I had to deal with the fact that I really didn't like it, but still wanted to kind of tackle it as an exercise.
It's not very good. Yeah, it's not a good dungeon.
It isn't. And I decided, I think the first thing you have to do is really look at these adventures and get out the theme and get out of the mindset that each room is a set, and instead break things up into areas and give yourself enough moments and enough cool stuff to make rooms as you need. It's like your 10-foot ceiling story. You don't have to have it all mapped out to the 10-foot square. And what Incursion blueprints do is they help you say cool stuff that inspires your friends to say other cool stuff. And you don't need every room to do that.
And then you all say cool stuff to each other.
Yes.
Back and forth forever.
Forever, yes. I would imagine that because you're doing stuff for a podcast, your conversions are much more faithful than mine are, probably.
No.
No? Okay. Okay.
No.
Fair enough.
I mean, maybe I'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I'll just say at the outset that I'm always more interested in just capturing the feeling of the module.
Right.
When I'm running an OSR thing in order to have material for Fear of a Black Dragon podcast, I still read through the whole module. I still can have a good sense of how it would have gone if I had done every little tiny thing. But in terms of the actual playing of it, I'm just interested in the feeling. I'm interested in the themes. I'm interested in the vibe. And I think that kind of is where I kick off in this conversation. I don't think Trophy Gold wants or needs a lot of detail. And in fact, it's somewhat limited by that detail. A high level of detail in your conversion, if you convert every room, if you make every room a set, or if you account for every space in the dungeon, it's going to run into the risk roll.
Yeah.
And in particular, the Devil's Bargain, because Trophy Gold has so much player facing narrative control and player, authorial responsibility from players. There's a lot of chances for the stuff that you come up with at the table because of the risk roll and because of Devil's Bargains is going to clash really badly with the dungeon. So it's better for you as a Trophy Gold GM if your conversion just deals in broad strokes, big sweeping ideas and arcs. It's much more effective than if you try to nail everything down. I like to think about dungeons in terms of what is the major theme, what's the idea, what's the motif, what's the feeling being invoked by, say, this cluster of rooms or this particular level of the dungeon, this part of the dungeon. And I kind of start from there in terms of figuring out what do I really want to show.
I feel like whenever I have trouble with Incursion writing, it's because either I didn't come up with a good theme, or I've wandered away from my theme, or I just didn't even come up with a theme at all. I got excited about the idea and just forgot to write the theme down. It's a good way to get unstuck.
And it's a lodestone for like, how do I interpret this module that was already written?
Yeah.
Here is a text that exists. It might be very long, and it may not be as straightforward as the Tomb of the Serpent Kings, where the theme is probably serpents, right? Like it might be more like obtuse than that. And so if you think in terms of theme, it's almost like, it's like reading a book. You know, when you're reading a piece of literature for like your college lit class or whatever, the professor tells you, think about the themes, pull out the themes. It's a similar idea. It's a way of organizing your thinking as you read through it, so you can kind of pick those ideas out. And importantly, for purposes of the conversion, the sort of mechanical necessities there, you have to also think about not just the themes or the mood or the ideas, but this part of the dungeon, what is it trying to do? Like, what's the purpose of this part of the dungeon?
Right.
Like, what are the characters trying to do? Maybe what is the author trying to do? Like, what is the purpose of this? So, Tomb of the Serpent Kings, a module that I suspect most people who are familiar with the OSR know very well, has that false tomb that is before the true tomb. So the false tomb, that's an easy set. And the goal there, like the thing that is meant to be taking place there, is getting out of it, like getting away from the false tomb, getting into the true tomb. You think about it in those terms. That false tomb might have 8 different rooms to it, but there are going to be like highlight things that are important, a couple of important objects, a couple of important things, and you emphasize those things. You don't get too in the weeds with the details. To me, it's just ideas and goals.
Yeah.
And I'll add that this applies not just to the actual per se dungeons, but to the entire adventure. The village that you sort of wander about in before you go to the dungeon, that has themes, that has ideas, that has a goal. There's something that the players are meant to be doing there, and you want to try to pull that out to make it your set goal.
Yeah.
And to discover those things, you don't have to account for every single hut.
Absolutely.
I was thinking of maybe doing like an example.
Okay.
Of just sort of working through some of these ideas a little bit.
Sure. Let's do it.
One of the classic Dungeons & Dragons modules is called Against the Cult of the Reptile God.
Right.
And in the beginning of this module, you have this village, Orlane. Now, there is a huge amount of detail in the module about Orlane. It has 20 keyed locations, and there's information about every happening in every building and with every single NPC in Orlane. We have a level of detail like how many silver pieces are kept in the sheriff's lockbox.
I can smell the fear that leads to that. That leads to that kind of prep. Like I know. Literally smell it.
It truly it is. It's like I have to plan for everything. And I love this example though, because I ran against the Cult of the Reptile God, not in Trophy Gold, but I don't think it was. Maybe it was World of Dungeons. I can't remember. But when I was running it though, I remember just thinking, there is so much information in this village, and a lot of it just feels, it's so granular, and I don't know what to do with it. But when I got reading it closer, I figured out that, when you kind of zoom out, there are just a few things that are actually happening in this village. There's a cult of the reptile god. Some of the villagers are cultists, some of them are not. And there's a story. The cultists are kidnapping people. Those are the 3 basic ideas in the village.
Yeah.
So if I were going to make a Trophy Gold incursion out of this, I would have that be a set, the Village of Orlane. I would probably settle on the set goal being learn about the bad things that have been happening in Orlane. That would be the goal.
Yeah.
And then I would, of all those 20 keyed locations, I would pick out like maybe 3 or 4 that are the most interesting NPCs or the most interesting locations. And I would point those out as the characters entered the village as places to go investigate. All the rest of it is just not important.
Yeah. And here's an example of a family that's embroiled in the bad things happening to Orlane because it's happening to them. Here's an example of a family that's doing the bad things. And here's an example of a family that's just on the side of it, but is being affected by these bad things.
And maybe knows where the dungeon is.
Right. And then from there, you can build everything else. While I'm listening to you talk about that, I'm remembering GMing Deadlands, and the players were all part of a traveling show. And so they would come up to a new town, and I would have this elaborate town planned, and I would spend the first game hiding it from them. And then the next week they would come and I would like slowly start to unveil it. And then the third week, we'd actually get to the good stuff. And then it wasn't until I read a now out of print game called Dogs in the Vineyard.
Love Dogs in the Vineyard. So
where as soon as you walk up into town, a kid runs up and says, "Are you here to kill the steward because they're drunk?"
Yep.
And it's like, oh boy, let's take me to the steward, and we just get started. Like, don't
get into it. Yeah.
Because what all those details in Orlane do, they don't necessarily help anyone. What they do is they lead to the players knocking on a door, the GM looking at what's happening in that hut and being like, some shepherd answers the door and looks at the adventurers like they're jerks for interrupting their dinner. And like, why are you here? And it's like, well, we're adventurers. We heard there was wrong things going on. Well, just get out of here. And it was like a game of frustration. It just, I rather than, hey, there's bad things happening in Orlane, let's do it.
Well, and from the perspective of like converting the module, which is a design perspective, by the way, that is game design.
Yeah.
Like from a design perspective and from a conversion perspective, the random conversations with random Orlaners, whatever we're calling them, they lead to nothing, right? Like it's just all very pointless, or they're redundant. Like if you read the module, 5 or 6 people, it's basically the same story. They're acting weird. They're probably a cultist. And I don't know like how many times you have to do that. And I know the reason why they wrote the module that way is because they intend for it to be a very simulationist exercise where no matter where you go, you have a chance of getting some of the story. But I just don't think that Trophy Gold is concerned with that. Like Trophy Gold just wants to tell you the few key things. And you picked up on something really good about like just sort of presenting the problem to the players. That's what Trophy Gold is so good at, because the set goal approach signposts to the players like what they're supposed to be doing. It says, okay, if my goal, if I wrote it, find out about whatever bad thing is happening in Orlane, they know, oh, something bad is happening in Orlane. I know how to approach it. I know how to look.
Right.
You don't even need all that extra stuff. You don't need all those extra details because the players are automatically keyed in to like get the story going and to do the right thing.
Right.
And so they're looking in the right places.
I'm imagining the cool answers I would get if I asked one of my players or all of my players, hey, how did you know that there was something wrong in Orlane? One player says, I grew up in a town that actually was near a dungeon.
Yeah.
And it was monster haunted. And I can tell the type of tension that these peasants are under because I grew up under it. Mm-hmm. So we flesh that out. And then another player says, oh, well, there was a little roadside shrine on our way here and the sun was setting and it looked like it was bleeding for a second. And I knew that one of the sisters was telling me that Orlane is in trouble. And you would get all of these different details and different cool things by just saying, like, how did you know that Orlane was in trouble? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it would help flesh things out.
Well, and that goes back to what I said earlier about when you do try to keep it super granular and super detailed, you don't leave any room for that kind of emergent player-facing kind of stuff. If maybe, you pose that question to a player, how do you know something is wrong in Orlane? And they tell you, oh, because their market is shut down. Like no one's in their market.
Right.
Am I supposed to be like, oh, well, actually, there's no market, right? Because that module says there's not a market. No, you don't. You like leave space for it to kind of work with whatever your players say. It's a different play culture, obviously, than like typical D&D play culture.
Yeah.
It's certainly not how I suspect most OSR adherents wouldn't maybe love this approach, but we're talking about Trophy Gold though. And so when you're converting Trophy Gold, you abstract it, you zoom in, you knock away the redundancies, and you keep it focused on some big themes and ideas. And so that truly is step one in your conversion.
Right.
It's finding those big ideas, finding the point of this part of the adventure.
Yeah, it just gets rid of frustration. I did something similar in a different vein when I wrote up Tomb of Horrors, or as I called it, the Horror Tomb. My theme was broken stairs in a community. Because the Lich who created that tomb is an asshole. Like he's just...
He really is, yeah.
Like even for a Lich, he's like, even other Liches are like, oh, fucking Asarak. Good Lord, what a douche. That freed me up in a lot of ways to run the death traps and run everything. Because the players knew. They didn't know what the death traps were or what was coming. But they knew that they were walking into someone who is not engaging in good faith. So anyway, it was fun. It allows everybody to engage with it without having that kind of punitive referee vibe. That's just not my vibe. That's not what I'm going for. Can I
ask you a question?
Yeah.
So in Tomb of Horror, I assume this is classic Tomb of Horrors, like the original one that you did. Yeah. Did you have the 2 entrances that just collapse and kill the party? Did you do those? Like in the very beginning, there's like 3 entrances and 2 of them are instant death, TPK death traps.
I don't think I had like TPK death traps, but I think I did have set goal, get through the true entryway without falling for any of Asarak's false entryway death trap
perfect.
bullshit.
That's great. Yeah.
Like that was literally
that's exactly how to handle it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
It was fun to make a version of it that I felt
that you could actually
I could have fun
stand to play.
playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You have a note here that says, be open to the module being a jumping off point for your own ideas.
Right.
I like that. What do you mean by that?
So I have a couple of 4th edition modules, and so I grabbed Thunderspire Labyrinth off the shelf, and I think I put like a poll up in the group where my Thursday night group is, and I was like, hey, do you want to play any of these 4 games? And they picked Thunderspire Labyrinth, and I pitched it as the blurb, because that's what I thought the game was going to be about, which is like you're chasing people into the ruins of a Minotaur city. And it turns out like that's the very tip of the barely iceberg of the adventure. And I was like, I have a lot of like lich on lich crime. The module ends up being a lot about Vecna, and I love Vecna, and I like Vecna, Asarak, the Lich Queen of the Githyanki. Like they've all been in my game. They're definitely like aware that there are liches. Yeah. But I was like, that's not what I'm here for. Like I just want a damned ruined Minotaur city. Like that's awesome. So I literally just like took words out of the module and I was like, that's a set because that's cool. And that's a set. That's cool.
Yeah.
Rather than do anything with the module really, or even like think about the greater plot of it, I used it as an inspiration jumping point, took a couple of words out of it, probably 36 words total, and put them into what ended up being the actual incursion and ignored everything else.
Yeah, that's a great approach. I think there's a spectrum of approaches here.
Yeah.
You can do like you did with that, where it's the module is just inspiration for something else that you write.
Right.
It can be something in the middle where you are mostly following the beat. You're following the major beats of the module, but you're just kind of abstracting it pretty heavily. You can also do a conversion that's actually really close to the text. When I ran the Bruja, the Beast, and the Barrow, I ran that really straight. It helps that that's a very small dungeon, so there wasn't like a lot to deal with.
Right.
But I wrote set goals on the PDF and otherwise just improvised from the text. I mean, it was about 90% identical to the way it's written, right? Like it kind of turned out that way. The risk rolls added like little variables here and there, but for the most part, it had a really close through line to the way the module's written. What we're kind of saying here is there's no hard and fast answer to this. I think you have to take each module on their own terms and kind of figure out what you need from it and what you want to do with it. We end here with the good sort of universal advice is what we started with, which is don't be so slavish to the idea that you have to account for every room and every keyed location and every NPC. You can focus on big ideas. You can focus on themes and motifs and organize your set goals around there, and your players are still going to get the full experience, right? It's going to be different.
Yep.
It's still going to be Deep Carbon Observatory, even though your conversion is only 5 pages and not 90, right? You're going to get the experience and the feeling of it, but just in a different way.
Make it yours, which is what anyone who would give you a module would tell you anyway, right? Like they would say, make it your own.
Yep.
So absolutely make it your own. There's got to be a future episode where we do the types of modules where it's like a dungeon ecosystem where there are factions feuding with one another and the players walk in Yojimbo-like and upset the balance. Because I think that's awesome and a whole other way of doing things. Like that's...
Bruja was that, but just in a smaller scale. It had factions, but just like it was just a tiny scale factional dungeon. Yeah. It's fun though. Yeah, it's cool. It's a fun. And here again, maybe this is a preview for the next thing we talk about. Set goals are perfect for factional conflicts in dungeons.
Oh, interesting.
Are perfect. They perfectly frame the action and are great as kicking off points for interacting with everything.
Oh, neat. Yeah, you could totally just like have, set goal, get to the hobgoblin in charge so you can make a deal.
Learn what the gnolls want.
Oh, nice. Right, because everybody wants something. Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah, set goals are a perfect medium to like sort of deliver that factional conflict in the dungeon. So
very sweet.
Well, that's a future episode. This is good. Thanks, Jed. Let's move on.
Desperate and doomed.
Okay, we are continuing the comic strip actual play of Wodum. And when we last saw Wodum, you were having a conversation with this elegant woman who you believe was perhaps in the form of a wolf before she entered the room.
Mhm.
And there was a little bit of a dance between the two of you where you tried to capture her, but didn't quite work out the way you wanted. And then you're kind of stuck together. And then you just sort of gave up. And now the two of you are, I think basically she was about to escort you somewhere, arm in arm, to some other part of the Huntsman's Manor.
Yeah.
I think she leads you away from that wing of the house, back into the sort of central area where the three staircases are kind of going up, and like there's the big bloody chandelier up above and all that, and where you carved your name on one of the banisters. She says, "My name is Catherine, by the way."
Ah, yes, I was going to ask. I'm sorry, I did not mean to be rude.
"Do creatures such as you have names?"
Yes, I am Wodum.
Wodum. Interesting. Well, Wodum, you are going to have a chance to meet quite a lot of my friends. Now, do you eat?
I will pantomime in order to be polite.
That'll do. I suspect pantomime is a perfectly fine word for what you're about to experience. Everyone upstairs is pretending to be something they're not in some way or another. Come, let's go. And she leads you up one of the staircases up to the second story.
Cool.
And that leads to a doorway. And inside that doorway is a massive feasting hall. In the feasting hall, in the open rafters above, candles are dripping wax from these elaborate antler candelabras. There are large wooden trestle tables heaped with platters of meats and breads and vegetables. There are dozens of people in here, engaging in all manner of boisterous conversation. There's a sort of occasional roar of excitement or enjoyment that rises up from some part of the room. Everyone is wearing what you assume, I guess, is fashionable clothing. I don't know how much you know about fashion, Wodum.
Probably, yeah, not...
But they look fashionable.
Cool.
And one end of the room has a sort of small dais, but there's no table on it, just this arched doorway. And the doorway has a door in the shape of a snarling wolf face. And interestingly, the doorway leads to a spiraling staircase, but there's no wall around the doorway. So it's like a door standing in free space, and then the staircase behind the door.
Yeah.
You could theoretically just walk around the door to the staircase, but so that's an odd feature. And so Catherine she'll say, "Oh, will you excuse me for a moment?" And she sort of steps away to go chat with someone. And so I'll just ask you, what do you do?
I think I'm going to make a toast.
Oh, and let me tell you, we have a set goal here.
Oh, cool.
The set goal in the feast hall is, quite simply, to enjoy the feast.
Oh, nice. That's a cool goal.
Yeah. So what do you do?
I'm going to make a toast, but in making that toast, I'm going to cast hospitality.
Oh, this is one of your spells, huh?
Yeah, so that violence can't break out as long as we're both maintain peace while you share food and drink.
Ah, very good.
Yeah.
That's very fortuitous. Yeah, it's good.
Cool.
I like this as a risk roll because I think whenever you kind of get magic involved, it's sort of risk rolls on the table. It sounds like what you're hoping to accomplish is just to make sure this is a peaceful affair.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's partly that I'm in a dungeon, and it's partly that I don't think Wode has been around many people and probably has a fair bit of construct social anxiety, and so he just wants to
fair enough. Yeah.
Throw the sorcery down and have some confidence.
In case you commit some horrible social faux pas, right?
Of course.
And, yeah. Good. I love that. Something I think could go wrong here. I think it could be the kind of situation where the ritual goes poorly and maybe has the opposite effect.
Yeah.
Maybe it has an effect where it actually causes people to feel slighted at the slightest possible.
Yeah.
Just the tiniest little thing causes them to feel slighted, right? And so suddenly it's a much more tense situation even than it would have been if you hadn't done the magic. That's my initial thought, at least, on what could go wrong. Talking about your dice, do you have a skill or a piece of equipment that would be helpful here?
I don't. Other than the ritual itself, I really don't know. I mean, I have mimicry, so I may be able to like imitate someone who I'm watching.
I like that. Yeah, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Or is it possible you have something in your pack that maybe would be helpful for doing a magical toast?
Yeah, you know what? I will. I think I'll take out a flagon.
Nice. Okay, good. What's special about this flagon?
It was the only thing that the person who made me had from their family. It was like something that like their family had brought when they had immigrated to this land. Yeah, it's just like a simple brass flagon, brass and tin flagon. But yeah, it's really old and it had a lot of value to the person who made me. Yep.
I love that. Can you remind me what your drive is?
My drive is freedom to Tyrillus.
Oh. Maybe the toast could have something to do with Tyrillus.
Yeah.
That could be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'll do it right now. I'll say, I would like to propose a toast to the steadfast constructs in Tyrillus who have bled gears and oil while under siege for these many years and someday will know peace.
I love it. That's great. You're up to 1 light die. You get a 2nd light die if you accept a devil's bargain.
Yeah.
I'll make a proposal. You can make an adjustment if you wish.
Sure.
My initial proposal is no matter what, you discover that the servants in the feast hall are mannequins.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm down with that. That's great. And I think I've got to throw a dark die in because it's sorcery,
You
right?
do indeed.
Yeah.
So 2 light, 1 dark. Go for it.
All right, here we go. On my light die, the highest was a 5, and on the dark die, it was a 1. So I'm...
That's a success with a complication.
Yep.
I think the complication is going to be during the toast, a drunken reveler will be interrupting you, demanding that you go get him something that he wants from the kitchen.
Oh,
and you will
shit.
you'll have to like kind of push him aside or calm him down and get him out of the way. If you don't want to do that, you can add a dark die and roll 4 dice to try for a 6.
No, I think Woad really doesn't know that he's not supposed to do that. So he'll say, okay, I'll get that for you.
Let's have the scene.
Yeah.
So say your toast again. I like your toast. I want to hear it.
Yeah, so a toast to the steadfast constructs of Tyrillus who have
And
bled...
in the middle of that, you're holding up your flagon, trying to get that done. And this fellow approaches. He is, I'm going to say he looks kind of like Gaston. He's tall.
Yeah.
He's broad-shouldered.
Yeah.
He's handsome, but like in that sort of like lantern-jawed kind of way. He says, Puppet, I require drink. My goblet is empty.
My name is Woad Doom. I am no one's puppet.
Oh, that's right, exactly. I love it. I love it when puppets have a sense of humor. Fantastic. Here, run off and fill up my goblet.
Man, I said I was going to do it. Now I don't know if I'm going to. You made him so obnoxious. Puppet is so terrible. Oh my God, that's such a terrible word. I'll kind of give like a side-eye glance to like another one of the mannequins there. Like, is this guy for real?
I like that. I actually think the other mannequins, maybe another mannequin who's like balancing like a couple of plates and a great big tray of like oily sausages in his arms. He kind of like comes over and a question for you.
Yeah.
How is this mannequin who serves these fine, noble people different from you?
Yeah, I think I was made to take more of a beating and to look very much more human. Mm-hmm. And whereas this one is very delicate and probably has really beautiful filigree and doesn't have 2 legs. I think they rest on like an orb that they like roll around on. Yeah, just much more elegantly made. And the way that this mannequin like holds all that stuff in balance is a sign of that. I don't think I would be able to do that necessarily at all.
I think that he rolls over there where you're at interposes himself between this reveler
Yeah.
and you.
Yeah.
And the reveler is sort of led off by this plate of sausage, and he's sort of like just a big mutton fist reaches out and grabs a couple of sausages and just like he tears into them gluttonously, the sort of hot juices sort of spraying out of his mouth as he eats them, and stumbles off away from you so you can finish your toast.
Yeah. I say, who have bled gears and oil while under siege, and may the siege be broken and freedom be brought to Tyrolis.
I love it. Tell me about the magic. How does the energy in the room change when the magic is complete?
I think the food gains like an extra, the food and drink gains like a sheen of peace. Oh, as long as I keep eating this and drinking this, I'll be okay. I think there is kind of it feels like when you don't overdo stress eating, right? It kind of feels like that. It's those first couple of bites of ice cream when you're having a bad day and you haven't just murdered the whole pint. Yeah.
I love it. It's great. And I think you're done with your toast. Everyone sends up, there's like a roar of approval. People are saying, to Tyrolis, yes, yes, Tyrolis. And a group of revelers, people in fine hunting clothes and gowns and things, they sort of wave you over to their table. They say, join us, please,
Cool.
Have a seat.
I'm super excited to be welcomed, so that's just awesome.
You sit down and, people just kind of launching into conversation, and people all around you are just consuming heaping plates of meat with abandon, right? Like, as you sit down, there's a feaster who's sort of like partway through telling a story. And so he kind of finishes the story after you've sat down. He says, now, the bounty was only enough for all of us if we brought him in alive. When we got upstairs, we found him all right, and the poor bastard was already running on hooves. Well, there was no way to bring him in alive after that, but I could at least bring his head back. There was plenty of Balin to go around, but not enough bounty, right? Fortunately, my two companions were jumpy as deer by that point, so no problems at all. And everyone kind of laughs. Oh, what was that, 50 years ago? Still have a bit of Balin left, in fact. He shakes his coin purse and sighs contentedly.
I think I'm just like getting an idea of how long these people have been stuck here, yeah.
Yes, yeah. And there's a person in front of you who's just got like this mound of meat and this great boat of gravy. And he's just like grabbing sausages and dipping it in the gravy and putting it in his mouth, and grabbing bits of meat and dipping it in the gravy and putting it in his mouth. Just it's almost like just voraciousness, right? And he's staring at you the whole time. He's kind of hunched over and he's staring at you, and you just see meat juices and gravy dribbling out of his mouth as he makes this very intense eye contact.
Yeah.
At a certain point, a little mouse crawls over and he grabs the mouse and dips it in the gravy and pops that in his mouth, and he's nonstop.
Yeah.
And he says, "Won't you enjoy some?" and pushes a plate toward you.
I'll like take like a very little bit and just put it up to my mouth as if I've eaten it. I don't even think I have a mouth. I'll probably do something with my other hand to hide the fact that my hand with the meat still has meat in it. So I'll like swirl a napkin and then like drop it on the ground.
Nice. Good.
Under the table so that no one knows I didn't really eat.
I love it. I'm not going to make you roll there. I like that just as a bit of fiction. And this is going on for some time. And eventually Catherine, person who invited you, she comes up to you and kind of puts her hands on your shoulders and she says, "Wodoom, there's a fortune teller. There's a line. Let's go get in line. Let's have our fortunes told."
Okay. Yeah, and I think I get up, like not quite taking my eyes off that eating guy because he's a little nerve-wracking, but thank you for the sausage.
You will notice he has very, very pronounced canines as he's scarfing down the meat.
Right.
And she takes you to the fortune teller's table. There is a long line of people. And merriment is continuing. Everyone's in a great mood. Mannequins are darting here and to and fro with drinks and food. And I think we'll just end there.
Cool. Get our fortunes told next time. That sounds great.
Indeed, indeed. And listeners, that is The Sixth Ring. The Sixth Ring is a production of The Gauntlet. You can find The Gauntlet on Twitter at GauntletRPG. We have a website. It's gauntlet-rpg.com. If you'd like to support this program on Patreon, you can do so. Go to patreon.com/gauntlet. And as another reminder, Trophy, the role-playing game, is available for pre-order. So go find that link in the show notes. Judd, thank you so much.
Thank you, Jason. And thank you, Rich, out there in the ether somewhere, editing our voices so that
Indeed.
we sound better in the ether to someone else.
And thank you, listeners. Take care.
Hi, this is Lowell, manager for the Gauntlet Gaming Community. I want to tell you that we have a Gauntlet Community Open Gaming event coming up the weekend of February 25th through the 28th. This is a free online RPG mini-con aimed at getting new players acclimated to online play, showing off awesome story, OSR, and indie games, and also introducing folks to how we run games on the Gauntlet. Signups will open February 1st at noon Eastern. Even if an event's filled, we have wait lists, and signing up for those is a good way to show game facilitators what RPGs are in demand. You can find all the details and links at gauntlet-rpg.com/gauntlet-community-open-gaming. There you'll find a link to the online registration calendar. Most sessions run 3 to 4 hours, and we have scheduled breaks between blocks. We're still adding events as of this recording. All sessions follow our Gauntlet Code of Conduct, which includes the mandatory presentation and use of safety tools by game facilitators. We hope you'll check out this community-created event. It's free and anyone can play. You don't have to be a Patreon supporter or community member. Thanks so much.